All right. Welcome to Hegemonix. My name is Misha, and this is my friend and co-host, George Michaelopoulos. And we got a really big show for you this week. Because
Really big show. Game on, as you'd like to say.
game on, yeah. Because the national security, uh, what is it called? National Security Strategy, was issued by the White House
Yeah, and
this past week.
NSS. Yeah,
NSS, yes. And it's unusual, to say the least. Um, it departs. Well, first of all, it's short. I think it's like 33 pages altogether, um, which they
something like
they
that. Yeah,
usually run over 100 pages. That kind of thing does. Um, it's concise and
yeah.
straightforward, and it's just full of interesting things. We'll go ahead and start on it. The focus is United States safety, sovereignty, and global influence. And it starts off, there's 6 sections that, with some important stuff in most in each one of them, for the most part. The first was restoration of American strength and security. And
Right.
this is a horn tooting part of it, where he talks about secure borders and stopping illegal immigration. And that's true. All he had to do was give an order, and he stopped it dead. You know, um, and that's good. $1 trillion investment was made to strengthen the military. Uh, yeah, the military budget was like something like $900 billion, I think, that just went through.
Something like
I'm
that.
not
Yeah.
sure what he's talking about for the rest of it, but that's about right. Um, I hope it's being put to good use, because in the past some of it's just been wasted. Uh, NATO, where he's been going on for several. Well, I think he was trying to get it in his first term, maybe. NATO to increase their uh, part of their contributions, the countries, to 2 to 5% of GDP, and he got,
Right.
for most part,
Right.
commitments from them. I think there are only a few that are actually doing it at the moment, but they've kind of ponied up to agree to raise um, their contributions. Um, and it goes on about Midnight Hammer, the Iran nuclear strike. Um,
Uh,
well, it solved the problem. I mean, that's the main thing you can say about the Midnight Hammer, the Iran strike. It solved the problem because it gave everybody a chance to stand down. Israel was losing a war, and
right.
conspicuously, and this
Yeah.
strike, whatever he hit, I don't know how much he hit actually, um, allowed him to separate. And now you've got, I don't know if you noticed the news today that the Israelis are saying that it was Iran behind the behind the Australia shootings that happened. I don't know, is it a false flag that the Mossad actually did it, or is it two Pakistanis, the father and son, that they're saying did it? But it's still Bibi Netanyahu trying to drag us into a war with Iran, even now after they lost one.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I don't know about you, Misha, but I fully expect a false flag because the globalists are clearly losing. They're losing in the Ukraine,
Yeah,
and the Israelis are losing the narrative. Um, you know, the political narrative. They become a pariah state, and you know, what you would call it, the Holocaust narrative is pretty much spent.
yeah,
So, you know, the globalists are like cornered rats, and that's never a good place to be.
No, it makes you dangerous.
So that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Um, and these people are the most dangerous when um, they perceive a crisis of their holding on to power. Um, and he goes on to talk about international conflicts resolved, all the wars he's settled. Um, I'll grant him that. Some of it, I don't know how much he had a hand in, but that's fine. It's much more agreeable to me to have a president who's interested in settling conflicts than one who's interested in starting conflicts. And that's a nice
Right,
change
right.
last
I
administration.
I agree. I mean, I still give him props for ending wars, even if they're not really big wars or, the Cambodia, Thailand thing. I'd never heard about it, the thing in Central Africa. I mean, that's still a better thing
Yeah.
than going around instigating wars. Of course, Venezuela, different issue. Maybe we'll talk about that. I don't know, but still, I mean, overall,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
as far as the Ukraine is concerned, it's clear that he's doing everything to drag his heels on that as
yeah,
far
yeah.
as being drawn into it.
Yeah, to the
Okay.
extent he can
It's
walk
wholly
away
different
and still
from Biden.
yeah, he inherited from Biden. Biden started that war. Um, and to the extent that he can walk away while retaining his neocon, that section of his base that's neocon, the Lindsey Graham section, he's doing it. And he has to make it look like he's upset both sides and blah, 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 woof, woof, woof. As if we weren't on, as if NATO wasn't fighting Russia. It was just Ukraine was fighting Russia, and the United States is some kind of referee. He's tried to turn it into that, and I guess in the public conscious, maybe he has, which is fine. It's all just giving Russia time to finish up operations. Um, and I'm wondering, really,
Yeah,
what they're thinking over in Europe. This is just a little bit of an aside, I guess. They keep talking about being at war with, going to war with Russia. The Germans, the English, even the French, that their sons and daughters are going
yeah,
to have to get on the
yeah.
battlefield and all this stuff. None of that is going to happen. And they're be voted out of office before, or they'll be the people will take over the government before they allow another kind of Vietnam type situation to develop. That was Soros's point about using Eastern Slavs to kill each other, which is what they did.
Right.
But they're not gonna. I mean, just for the people who are watching this in Vietnam, we lost 58,000 straight, about 58,000 dead
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
1965 to 1973. That is about the number. That's less than 2 months of fighting in the Ukraine, of Ukrainian casualties. So they have to be grateful that all these casualties are Ukrainian, and they can't in any way in their minds seriously think that their people can withstand those types of casualties. All this stuff is posturing. It has to be posturing because nobody's that crazy. I don't think um, they'd be run out of.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. It's also possible that the elites are just in this incestuous bubble that they believe their own propaganda, that because they're Westerners, they're ipso facto better than Slavs, especially better than Russians.
yeah,
And, uh, you know, it's it's like we here in America, we still talk about, well, we're the free world. Clearly, you know, we're not.
yeah,
And when you say the free world and you include Europe in it, well, you can go to jail in most European countries for reading a book, for just talking about a
yeah,
book, for
yeah,
questioning historical narratives. You can go to
yeah.
jail. Okay,
in UK
and
especially.
that doesn't
Germany,
sound very free to me.
no,
Yeah,
no,
I'm sorry, it doesn't.
no. You're perfectly right. I mean, you may have seen that chart of the number of arrests for internet posts for the different countries. UK is at the top,
Oh yeah,
and
oh yeah.
Russia's way down at the bottom. It's like,
UK is at the top, and the Russian Federation is near the bottom,
yeah, yeah. It's
and
strange. These are
I mean
strange
by
times.
several
It's
orders
like,
of magnitude.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's strange times. It's the first shall be last and last shall be first kind of. There's a strange juxtaposition that's happened between it was us being the free world and ostensibly the Christian world, although that hasn't been really true since at least the 60s, um, against the Soviet Union and atheism and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
now it's just flipped on its head because you have a Christian Russia and you
Yeah,
have Westerners censoring like the Soviets did in the old days. It's
right.
like, but it shows one thing that the West really was, from the time of FDR, I believe, a soft totalitarian system. It just didn't have the edge to it that the Soviet Union did. But people thought of the state as being above all and didn't think of I'm not talking about every politician. There are probably a lot of them from the South and Southwest who actually do
Mhm.
believe in God or did believe in God. But
Yeah,
the powers
right.
that be in the halls that run things, they were kind of either atheists or deists, and they thought the state was the end all be all. And so it's just the shoes on the other foot now. So the principle guiding foreign policy, that's one of these subsections. America first and a realistic assessment of international relations. I assume that they're
Yeah,
talking about moving to a realist rather than a ideological basis for assessing international relations. That is closer to the Mearsheimer idea or schema than what they've been doing so far. Non-interventionism is preferred with a high bar for justified interventions. He's a
right.
peace president. He wants to be a
Well,
peace president.
I
Yeah.
mean, this yeah, this is not a realistic. It also goes into what St. Augustine said about just war theory. And, I took the time of writing it down here because I really like it, and
Yeah.
personally, I think that, there are 6 steps to just war theory. First of all, it's a last resort. In other words, there's been negotiations that broken down. 2, it has to be a just cause.
Yeah.
3, it has to have a valid authority. And 4, there's got to be a reasonable expectation of probable success. In other
Yeah.
words, you probably will win, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then number 5 is proportionality. In other words, we don't drop nukes on people over a border dispute.
Yeah.
And 6, there's got to be an exit strategy. If none of those conditions are met, then it's not a just war. So, I'm not saying that this thing that this national security strategy fulfills all those, but it's a damn sight better than what we've had, especially ever since Wilson with his making the world safe for democracy. And then we got to fight him on the beaches of Vietnam. Otherwise, we're going to fight him here. And the global war on terror and neoconservatism. I mean,
Yeah.
all of those are abominations as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, it's common sense and just a sensible um, assessment of things seems to be returning to the White House, at least. Um, the
Yeah.
Russians were very received this. very graciously and approvingly, apparently, because they
Uh-huh.
thought that, I mean, Vladimir Putin has tried, he's a lawyer, and he's tried to make everything they do legally justifiable, if not passing the laugh test, in the
Right.
West would. Um, but he's really committed to, I don't know whether he's committed to just war theory, but something like that, um, especially with respect to
Mhm.
Ukraine. And he's done everything he could. And I'm sure they welcome this. I've seen Peskov says he welcomed this. I've seen Putin himself welcomes this
Mhm.
as a security posture for the United States. Now, that's going to upset a lot of people
Mhm.
that don't like Russia. But, this got to end somehow. Wars just don't go on forever. And so, there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel. And it's obvious that Russia's not giving up in
Yeah,
Ukraine.
right. Right.
um,
I mean, and we can't, forget, I just saw Don Trump Jr. on a podcast last week, and he said, there's no money to be made in peace. So we can't forget that part of the
yeah,
triangle here of why we have war, because somebody's making money off of it. And 2 weeks ago, Yermak, I think Andrei Yermak, who was the chief of staff to uh, Zelensky, and was fired, and his offices were ransacked, as well as his apartment, because it's clear that he's skimming off the top, and maybe he has, and even if he's not, he's got the receipts of who's getting kickbacks back in the West. Which congressmen and parliamentarians in Europe have stock portfolios with Raytheon and General Dynamics and McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and stuff like that. So who knows? I mean, you can't discount that either.
yeah. I mean,
But
he talked about going to the front at first, and then it turns out he wasn't going to the front, and they raided his office. And now in Parliament in Verkhovna Rada, they're starting to speak out uh, loudly against Zelensky and saying that his office is in
good.
disarray, and um, so it looks like it's the beginning of the end anyway over there. And the thing that I thought was funny was the last peace proposal that that Trump submitted to both Ukraine and I think he submitted to Ukraine first, and Ukraine changed one line in it about any tribunals and war crimes or anything like that, and about accounting. They took out the thing about accounting, that there would be a full accounting, and they said there'd be full
Mm,
amnesty for all actions on either side, which is
mhm.
basically we get to keep our money and we just walk away, and that's how we're gonna. That's the only conditions that we'll
Yeah.
accept. Not going to be an audit by somebody. I thought that was hilarious.
Since 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 we're there at that possible tipping point, I want to ask you this: have you heard what's going on in Odessa? I mean, it seems to be a news blackout. I can't find out anything.
Um, they hit the power station over there, and it went dark the other day. Um,
Yeah,
Friday
or
night, I guess.
I heard
Like
that.
the photos I've seen, you look out and you can see just from the moon, the landscape, but there's nothing. Absolutely, you don't see fire, you don't see anything
Right.
there. And people in Odessa are talking, because it's a Russian-speaking territory, are talking about welcoming the
Right.
Russians when they get there. And I think that they're probably getting ready at some point to go in there, because they're starting to shoot back in the Black Sea, where they've had some of their ships and facilities there struck by Ukraine, and now they're shutting
Uh,
down Ukrainian shipping uh, in and out from Odessa.
uh,
And I
yeah.
think that's just
Yeah.
a
Well.
I don't know how long it's going to take them to do it because a lot of the military people looking at it say you can't do it from the sea. You got to do it. You got to cross over in the middle of the country and then go down.
Right,
Maybe,
right.
maybe,
That's what I'm hearing too.
yeah. Um, but I think it sounds like they're committed to taking Odessa at this point because nothing
Yeah,
has worked. Zelensky's sabotaged the last attempted peace, and I think they're
right,
they're just marching there. And now that there may be some other BS that comes up where they'll play along just in order to keep the Russian military machine rolling,
right.
while there's this gobbledygook, going on in negotiations over at the side. But I
Yeah,
think that's what they're committed to what's called Novorossiya, which is
right. Yeah,
the east all the way down to Odessa and really over to Transnistria. But that whole kind of reverse L shape. Um, and I thought that, on Monomachos, when we were talking about it much earlier, I thought that's what they would do, just take the Donbass and Novorossiya, and that's all they need because the Ukrainian state's not really viable if they do that. That's the Odessa thing. They can't
right.
op stay at a
It'll be
port.
landlocked. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have any real inside information um, on it other than what I've seen from pictures of the area, this and that.
Well, the there's there's two things here that's going on as far as I'm concerned. As far as Putin, he knows that Trump wants an optical win. And I think that's what's preventing him from just going completely lights out on Kiev as well.
Yeah, yeah,
That leaves room for the neocons to do a false flag, though. You know,
yeah,
and so that's the. I mean, all things being equal, right now, Russia's winning, has been winning, is going to win. Okay, um, whether the rest of the world agrees with it or not is immaterial at this point, but
yeah,
until that final nail in the coffin of Ukrainian viability is, nailed down, then there's always room for mischief as far as a false flag, and I have to agree with our friend Jim Jatras on that, so, uh,
yeah. I
unless, of
think,
course, August 15th, the day of the dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos on the new calendar, when in Elmendorf Air Force Base in Anchorage or in Alaska, you know, the Russian Air Force One landed and a literal red carpet was rolled out.
yeah,
And there was about a 4-hour meeting, and this was probably all hammered out. Said, look, we're not going to go to war. I'd like to think that that's what they agreed. We know there's going to be false flags. We know the neocons are going to go ballistic. We know Macron and thinks he's Napoleon and all that. But at the end of the day, we are not going to go to war. Okay.
yeah.
Uh, I'd like to think that that's what happened
I'm
in
pretty sure it
in
is.
Alaska.
Yeah,
For one thing, you don't roll out the red carpet man you call Hitler. You just don't do
yeah,
that. Come
yeah.
on. So
It's
anyway,
true. And then in
anyway,
this
whatever.
document, there's a totally different tone for Russia
Yeah,
and for Europe, which we'll get to here in a
yeah,
second.
yeah,
Um, they
yeah,
use
yeah.
the
Let's get to it.
term balance of power. A balance of power is maintained to prevent any nation from becoming overly dominant. Now that to
Right.
me is reminiscent of the before the First World War, the concert of nations and all that, and just making sure that no particular one nation got too big for its pants. I can see that operative in the whether it's going to be three countries, like a Yalta 2.0, or whether the C5 thing that they're talking about has legs,
Uh-huh.
which would add Japan and what was the other one? India.
It'd
Um,
be it'd be Russia, China, India, uh, Japan, and the
Japan, the
US,
United States. Yeah.
right? I think
Uh, yeah,
yeah.
that's what the C5 thing is supposed to be. I don't know if the Russians will go for that. I mean, it sounds like they're trying to sta arrange a table so that they can, vote with India and Japan to override what Russia and China might wanna do. That's what I'm thinking a C5 is,
Uh-huh.
and it really depends on what India does, and I don't see any reason to put India to give India
Yeah.
that much power. Um, so I don't know, and what,
Yeah, no,
I
but
think Medvedev and Peskov have talked about that, and they're kinda making fun of it over in Russia, the whole C5 thing, so I don't know if it has legs or not. But one of those things, either the 3 or the 5, I think, what he's saying here, balance of power, the language is not that of unipolarity. It's not of America being the dominant power in all the earth.
you're right.
And so that's helpful. That's helpful. The best line, I think, of the whole the whole schmeal is the era of mass migration is deemed over. That's a good line.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, to me, as a European American, as
Yes.
somebody who's still has relatives over in Europe, and not just Greece, but France as well,
Yeah.
I think the word he said was civilizational erasure has to
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah.
And what what's really gratifying to me is that ordinarily, if you'd said that maybe 6 months ago, people would be screaming, "Racist, racist, racist," or anti-Semite or xenophobe and stuff like that. And now as the Greeks say, you don't hear "boo." I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the Overton window has shifted so far to the right, and he keeps on pushing it to the right.
Yeah.
And, that's right. I mean, civilizational erasure is, and we've got a way to speak about that. I mean, we can talk about it because we're trying to do it here in America. He sealed the border.
Mhm.
You know, he's deporting people, probably not to the extent that you or I are happy with, but they are being deported. A lot of them are self-deporting.
Mhm.
I've seen numbers close to 3 million have gone back. You know,
Yeah.
well, that's a step in
Yeah.
the right direction. I know some
Yeah.
people in the alt-right are just not happy with that. They're saying, "No, by God, we want them put on trains and sent to FEMA camps or whatever, or or tossed into the sea." Well, that's not gonna happen, but we are doing what we can to stop civilizational erasure, and that just doesn't mean sending, tightening our borders and sending these people back. It also means you know, getting rid of DEI and
Yeah.
talking openly about the white working class and talking openly about um, the ortho bros in our particular context.
Mhm.
The crisis in young men, in young males
Yeah.
and stuff like that, because you're not gonna have any kind of culture, civilization, country, nation state at all if you do not have a place for young men to
Mhm.
to, uh, to do the heavy lifting, because they're the ones who do the heavy lifting. Now, I know this is not what the feminists wanna hear, "Anything a man can do, I can do better, blah, blah, blah." Well, we know that's bullshit, okay? And that doesn't mean that men are better than women. No, it means they're different. Women are different. They have a role to play, but so do young men. And when you take young men out of that equation, and while you're taking them out, vilify them, you know, there's going to be hell to pay. There will be total hell to pay. Part of
Yeah.
it being civilizational erasure. Anyway, that's all
Yeah.
I got to say about that.
Well, that's the old Wotan, Jungian thing, which I'm fully on board with. I think at the end of the day, that archetype, will reemerge if something's not done about
Yeah,
this problem. And that's why I think this is a good. At least people, somebody's saying it, and that somebody is the president of the United States, and he's saying that the immigration has gone
yeah,
way overboard, not only here but in Europe as well, and that it just can't go on like this,
yeah.
and that we're not even going to be having relations with Western Europe if they get taken over by the hordes that they've
Yeah.
been importing.
No, no, no. I mean, no, you're absolutely right. But for all those European elites who think that they're going to, saddle up and go attack Russia, you ain't going to do it with these hordes of immigrants. They're not going to do it,
Yeah.
unless you're just kind of like really diabolical here and playing 5D chess and, 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 and taking a million North Africans and Syrians and Middle Easterners and Afghanis and Pakis, sitting them up and setting them into the meat grinder so they can die, in hundreds of thousands. Uh, Forget it.
Well,
You're
what
not going to
some
have
people,
it,
yeah, what some
and
people
and they're
are
not
talking.
that smart. I mean, they really aren't that. I mean, let's be honest.
Um, what some people are talking about, though, is that the replacement thing is they want to send millions of whites into the meat grinder and have these people replace the whites as
Right,
serfs for their,
right.
um, I still, um,
That I
I just don't
believe.
think that
That I
people,
believe. But
yeah,
but
yeah. Um, that quote, "Era of mass migration is deemed over," reminds me of you, and I'm talking about Bill Clinton, the era of
big
what was
government is over.
big government. Yeah, the era of big government is over. Um, and the interesting thing about that was he took out some bells and whistles and did some other things in order to rig this thing. But he ended up getting, I think there was 1 or 2 years where there's a balanced budget officially. And he
Yeah,
did
he was, yeah.
cut back
Yeah, he did. He did.
on the government to the extent that in his second term, a lot of his diehard progressives that were in there resigned, like Stephanopoulos, who was part of the government. They resigned after the second term, after the second election, because of what he had done as far as reducing government. So to that extent, it had legs and it worked. And this one, I think there's a conscious effort maybe to bring that up as a past remembrance when people are looking at this thing. Um, he wants to protect us from government overreach, evidently, which has always been a concern since 9/11, really. Um, burden sharing among allies. We talked about that with the raising to 5%. Economic security is prioritized through balanced trade, securing supply chains, and reindustrialization. That's an
Mhm.
interesting word to have in this.
Yeah. Right.
He's talking, and it leads right into the Western Hemisphere thing, and then you get Europe later on. But there's the
Right.
Trump corollary.
Right.
Uh, I'm not sure exactly what the Trump corollary is, but it's the same thing basically as the Monroe Doctrine, maybe with a little more edge to it. Um, will deny
I
adversaries the
think so.
ability to control strategic.
There's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
What were you saying?
yeah. The I agree. I don't think the term corollary. I mean, I'm not hearing anything. Again, I'm hearing no screaming from the left or about this. I am hearing some screaming from the right about, at least the libertarian right about Venezuela. But as far as the Monroe Doctrine, I mean, that's kind of like our oldest doctrine. I mean, it's 200 years old minimum, uh, one, you know, when you talked about Bill Clinton, and I agree, when he said that the Arab big government is over, he kind of spoke into existence a new narrative, a new paradigm, which worked for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Um, I'll go back even further. When Reagan said that this was the evil empire, and then he said, tear down this wall. People within his administration, especially George Shultz, said, you can't say this. Don't say this. This is,
Yeah.
you know, do not.
Yeah.
But he did.
Hmm.
And when the American president said that this is the evil empire, you know, that caused shockwaves in in the Soviet Union. And it caused many in the Soviet Union to kind of say, well, you know, he's not wrong, you know,
Yeah. I mean,
you know, there, you know, Solzhenitsyn said, one word in truth, one word spoken in truth can move the world.
mm-hmm.
And depending on what that one word is, and who says it, you know,
Yeah.
that's profound. And so Trump, by doing this new NSS and talking about, uh, you know, the Monroe Doctrine, you know, reindustrialization, civilizational erasure, the era of mass migration is over. That's the one particularly.
Yeah.
That's gonna have some oomph to it, you know, and
Yeah.
it is gonna cause it to happen. I
I think
I
so.
I I just think it is.
I think so because everybody was talking about it, as far as I could tell, on all the
Yeah.
venues. I
Mhm.
mean, even
Yeah.
the the MSN was talking about it to a certain extent, and foreign capitals
Yeah.
that it was they had their feathers ruffled by the whole thing, but that means they took it seriously and they realized that it's a serious thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, just a little bit more on the Western Hemisphere, and then we can go to Europe and Africa.
Yeah.
Um, his focus is stability, control migration, and combat drug trafficking in the Western Hemisphere. And he wants to make regional champions, which
Mhm.
I guess are like little hegemons, little like Brazil could be one, but Brazil is in BRICS.
Mhm.
But regional uh, godfathers or regional um, caretakers
Mhm.
uh, who create stability or put some order into this or that region in Latin America, I think is what he's talking about. I think they think this is probably necessary to combat the cartels. Um, and the thing that is recurrent here, there are two things that are recurrent. One is the drug trafficking and the cartels, which he's really against and he wants to get rid of by any means necessary, including potentially using lethal force, they said. But also, in all of this stuff, he's like, we got to start doing more business. The United States got to start doing more business. There's got to be business down there, and there's got to be business interest of the United States developing things down there.
Mhm.
And
I
it
agree.
seems talking about strengthening economies and creating attractive markets for American investment, supply chains, reducing dependencies. So a lot of people would say, this is his saying, this is our sphere of influence, and we're marking it off. And there's some truth to that, but it's also marking it off for the good, saying we want to develop this region, if for no other reason, to defeat the cartels and to halt the immigration to the United States. If
Right.
if it
Right.
looks a lot better, if
Yeah.
it looks a lot better down there, then it doesn't look that you know it's not as enticing, to come up here.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. I think we can all agree on that.
Well,
Um,
you saw a couple of weeks ago what happened in Mexico City. when, there were, like, literally hundreds of thousands of mostly young men, but mostly young people, just getting close to storming the presidential palace and
Yeah.
calling President Schonbaum, dirty names on graffiti and all that.
Yeah.
And, some and I remember there's this one protester, a young woman, she said, We want, the Americans to come here and overthrow the cartels." Okay? I
Yeah.
mean, now, was this orchestrated by the CIA, a color revolution in reverse? You know, maybe, maybe not. I still think there's a lot of organic things going on here. Plus, I don't expect the CIA to do anything pro-American.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they've been doing business with the cartels. I don't know if they're interested in putting them out of business. Um, and if they had been,
that's
then
true.
they've been doing a bad job in
That's
Mexico
a
because
point I didn't
Scheinbaum is,
consider, but yeah.
yeah, because Scheinbaum works for the cartels. So, um,
Yeah.
now a lot of the
Oh, oh,
Western
oh, oh, oh,
go ahead.
I'll cut her this much grace. I'll I'll cut her this much slack, excuse me. Whether she actually works for them or not, she's a hostage to them. We could say that,
Yeah,
at least. And
yeah,
so making a virtue out of necessity, okay, I'll get my cut. I'll look the other way. I'll tell the federales to not go after you then, but to go after your opponent here, stuff like that. But she could be just you know, part and parcel of them. Who cares? I mean, it's a
yeah,
failed state. The
yeah,
cartels run it.
yeah,
Okay. Period. End of story.
yeah.
Okay. So
And you won't be able to do a biopsy on the whole thing until after it's done. I mean, and this is an aside. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on this, but um, when the Soviet Union dissolved, the church, especially the Russian church abroad, but also the faithful elements of the Russian church in Russia, had to decide who was just cooperating and who was a collaborator. And that's a line
yeah.
that's not always, a bright red line. And so that takes some
Right.
sorting. But with the cartels, you probably
That's a
don't
good
have to
point.
worry about that
That's a good
because
point.
once your usefulness is run out, they'll get rid of you. So, um,
Yeah.
but
That's true. Yeah.
there's he doesn't want competitors in the Americas. This much is clear. Discourage
Right.
collaboration with adversaries, non-hemispheric competitors, develop strategic resources, reject foreign assistance, getting the countries to reject foreign assistance from overseas, promote American goods and services
Right.
as superior alternatives to foreign offerings, and identify investment opportunities. Business, business,
Hmm.
business. I like the way it worked because that's true. If you raise the standard of living for all these people, they're going to love you. First of all, they're not going to come up here, and it's going to be stronger. I mean, we've got non-proliferation. They're not going to come up here militarily. You don't have to worry about that. I mean, there's no reason to keep them serfs and on a plantation. You raise them up to some kind of dignity. I'm not saying it's all third world
Yeah.
down
I
there,
agree.
but that's why we call it the third world. So you got three sections left here, really. The
Uh-huh.
first has to do with China and the Indo-Pacific. The second one after that is
Uh-huh.
Europe and stability, and it's a real zinger. We'll get to that real quick. And then the Middle East and
Uh-huh.
U.S. and
Right.
Africa, four sections. China, he's not talking about it as necessarily military. He's just talking about it as um, getting the economic house in order, trade based on reciprocity and fairness, get our production up, uh, discourage their predatory
Right.
economic practices. Um, and he wants a lot of economic engagement in both Southeast Asia and Latin America. it doesn't sound like he wants to go to war with these people. It really doesn't. It just sounds like he wants to compete with them, and he doesn't want them taking advantage of the United States, which a lot of politicians here have allowed that. Um, that's the one thing I have that I like Steve Bannon. I like the way he thinks in some areas, and I like his following that they have a political impact and everything. But I think he gets China wrong.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think the Chinese are necessarily
Yeah, I
malevolent. I just think that they'll go as far as we let them. You know. What do you think about
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm a huge fan of the way he thinks geostrategically. By the way, I did hear that this NSS was authored by, Elbridge Colby, who's, number 3 in the Department of War. I can't remember his exact title, but Assistant Secretary for Strategy or
Yeah.
something like that. He is not a Russia hawk. He's not a neocon, but for some reason he is a China hawk. Regardless, he's way more realistic, and anything is better than what we've had going for the last 30 years. I mean, it's just horrible, you know. And
Yeah.
yeah, I I would agree that the Chinese need to be left alone too. And if not, then let's just be honest and rescind what we said of our official policy is regarding Taiwan. Our official policy was that Taiwan is part of China. Now,
Yeah.
I remember when that happened, and my dad was just, I mean, he was shaking. It was breakfast table, and he picked up the newspaper that morning, and he was a liberal Democrat,
Yeah.
very anti-communist though.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't believe that Carter did that, or his State Department did that. I mean, that was just like a complete stab in the back to the Taiwanese. And it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Well, that's been our policy now for at least 40 years. Well, why why should we go about antagonizing the Chinese if that's our policy? If we want to antagonize them, then let's rescind it. Say, no, we were wrong. Taiwan is the Republic of China. You guys on the mainland are a bunch of commies. Okay, at
Yeah.
least that would make sense to go after them and to be China hawks, in my estimation. But no one asked me.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with that. This economic engagement thing he's talking about not only Latin America but Southeast Asia, and you would think that if it were spheres of influence,
Yeah,
that he wouldn't be necessarily talking about expanding over there. But the thing is, we've got so much over there
right.
already. We got
And
Japan, we got the Philippines,
yeah,
uh, and so
yeah,
it's not. It's one of those things about leaving the boundary stone where it is. I think um, that we're going to keep what we
uh,
have over there, and we're not going to acknowledge that there's a South China Sea, uh,
uh,
zone for the Chinese. That it all belongs to the Chinese or anything like that.
uh,
We're going to keep investing there, but we're not necessarily interested in starting up with the Chinese either. The next part about deterring
uh,
military threats says maintaining military preeminence and preserve military overmatch to deter aggression, particularly regarding Taiwan. That's fanciful thinking. Uh,
yeah,
I don't think the Chinese are interested in attacking Taiwan. I think they're interested in reintegrating with them over time and just having it, as long as
right,
until they can get the United States to stand by the wayside and have agreements with them. Um, to the extent that they trade, I think that that's what they're looking at. But we
right,
couldn't stop them if they wanted to. The only way we could stop them is the same way that we could stop Russia with nuclear weapons, and then everybody dies. Because whenever they do the matchups between the United States Navy and the Chinese win, and it's in their backyard, and
That's right.
that is no small factor there. So military overmatch. That's Hegseth saying, well, actually, Hegseth before he got confirmed said the same thing in public. Every time we ran a, a simulation, they beat us, or every time but one, or something like that. He said.
Yeah, they did.
Uh,
No,
then a renewed
I
part of
I
this is
think
a
9
renewed.
times out of 10,
That
they
was it.
beat us.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and the
That's
one
just
time
re.
we beat them, we'd probably have, the Eisenhower and the Ronald Reagan said, sitting on the ocean floor somewhere, with
Yeah.
6,000 dead sailors or Marines per ship. I mean,
Well,
and it'd still be a
they
victory, but, a Pyrrhic one. So what, for what?
yeah. Anymore, there's a saying that's going around about there are two kinds of vessels: submarines and sitting ducks. Because the
Yeah,
way that
yeah,
missile technology, hypersonic missile technology, is advanced, they can take out anything that's sitting on the sea. Um,
yeah.
that's why I think Russia has only one. The reason being that they're not that useful anymore. Um, so,
Mhm.
renewed defense industrial base. I think I'm not sure how they're going to do this, but it's kind of a well done uh, type statement that we need a reinvigorated military industrial base, because we
Mhm.
sent everything we have to Ukraine, and the Russians just brushed it off.
Right,
And we don't have
right.
a government-owned military industrial complex. They do. Now, I'm not a socialist, but I do think there's
Yeah,
certain things that the government can and should do.
yeah.
And it turns out that this is one of them, because unless you can show that you're going to have a long-term conflict where they're going to be able to produce this stuff in bulk, so it competes with what they're producing right now, you can't get private enterprise to produce all this stuff. You could order them somehow to
Yeah.
do it, um, but not with the politics we have here in the United States.
Oh,
So that's a
and right, and not the politics we have. And let's not forget, we're not the same people that we were during World War II. For instance, during World War II, sure, we had private companies building everything, blah, blah, blah. But for instance, this was last year, Colonel McGregor said during World War II, we could build an aircraft carrier from stem to stern within 2 months.
wow.
It would take General Dynamics and Raytheon 2 months to figure out what everybody's pronouns are before they even, nail, riv,
Yeah,
put put in the first
yeah,
rivet in into a cruiser or a destroyer.
yeah.
We're not that same people. And I'm not talking about demographic change. There's that. I'm just talking about the overall feminization. We've had to feminize our workforce, our industry, our corporate world.
Hmm.
And, it was different back then. Sure, we put Rosie the Riveter in so that her husband could go land on the beaches of Normandy and all that, but she she put on her jeans and took off her makeup and put in a do-rag around her head and stuff like that and said, let's get rolling. This was not the feminization of the workforce. It was we're at war. It's a declared war. We got to win.
Yeah,
Okay.
just a little more
And then
full mobilization.
as soon as their husbands came home and demobilized, they went back into the kitchen and they got prettied up and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I just don't see us going after Russia or China in a full military, a declaration of war. I just don't see
Yeah,
it, and
yeah,
we have actively deindustrialized Europe. I mean, we somebody blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, which gave a whole bunch of cheap LNG to Germany, which Germany is the economic engine of Europe.
yeah.
And, they're going through a recession now and they've become deindustrialized and and so's everybody else in Europe. So how are these people going to put out tanks and helicopters and armor personnel carriers and all that stuff? They ain't, you know. I just don't see it. Plus their birth rate is just going down the toilet. So
Yeah.
there's that too. But that's a story for another day.
Um, well, I think most people who are sane and understand um, the capacities realize that. I mean, I think what he's saying is, in order to be taken seriously by Russia and China, we need to reinvigorate our defense industry because they can destroy everything we can produce right now without breaking a sweat, which is a problem. Except the stuff we have to
Yeah,
hold back for our own defense and what Europe has to hold back for its own defense. Um,
right.
in the end of the day, Defense Department or the War Department is really a big make work project, unless you're talking about uh, special ops and things like that. Because nobody's gonna; these armies aren't gonna fight. um, God help them if they do.
Yeah.
But we got nuclear weapons, and all we have to do is these little skirmishes, like we've done in the Middle East.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah.
what do you think about the way that the national security strategy talks to the Europeans and about the Europeans?
It's like, we're bitch slapping them. You I mean, let's just be honest, and, uh, um, we're telling them the truth, okay? We're being objective. Where we're wrong is that we've put them in this position, you know, and now we're criticizing them, and that's not fair, and that's not fair,
Yeah,
but it's better to wake up later than never. And,
yeah,
it's just, I mean, our elites and the European elites have collaborated to deracinate the European continent, okay? And they succeeded in deracinating the American polity as well, the United States. We, however, have woken up and are kicking back. We're fighting back. Um, so we have some room to tell. Basically, Trump has to say the previous administration and the administration before my previous administration were wrong to tell you all this BS about kumbaya.
yeah,
Okay. We were wrong. You shouldn't have listened to us. We're sorry. So, but
yeah,
here's what we're going to do to make it better. We're going to help you get rid of all these people. Okay. We're just going to help you because
yeah,
it's in your interest and it's in our interests.
yeah,
And, as far as declining birth rates, well, start getting jiggy again, kids. I mean, I mean,
yeah. They got to do. Yeah,
it's not that hard, you know, and especially, and this is something that really bothers me as a man of the right, um, a Friedmanite to an extent,
hmm
um, libertarian, is that among all peoples on earth, the Europeans have no excuse for not cranking out kids. They got free medical care, free education, free college. You got to apply to it and get accepted. You don't need three cars per family or two cars. You just need one. They've got great public transportation, even in countries like Greece. Which are probably the most third world country in Europe or whatever. Like that. They they have no excuse to not produce children. Okay. Whereas here in America, it's, you're pretty much on your own here, unless you wanna get on welfare, which there's still a stigma for many people on that, but even then, you can't be on welfare if you're both married and, welfare's to be there to make the single mother a viable economic or social unit for the most part. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're a single mother, you get SNAP, you get EBT cards, you get Medicaid, you get a Section 8 housing. That adds up. That's a lot of money right there. Okay.
Yeah,
But you can't have it if you've got a man living in the house,
yeah,
especially if he's married to you.
yeah. That's
It
the
may
reason.
vary from state to state, but there you
Yeah,
go. So, again, I'm getting a little too sociological here, uh, but I've been thinking a lot about that, and, I mean, I just I think the Europeans should just get over it. They've got a good, I mean, my god, in Greece, you can retire when you're 55 years old,
yeah,
okay? I mean,
yeah,
every Greek of my grandfather's generation that I knew died 2 days before worked up until they died in well into their 70s, okay?
yeah.
But we're Greek, and the Greeks over in Greece, they're Greek too, but they can retire at 55. My god, I mean, come on. It's just, I'm 66, I'm still working, I like my job, don't get me wrong, but that's a story for another day. Never. Enough. I've got off my high horse here now.
No, that's fine. That's all true, and they the Europeans are going to have a come to Jesus in the not too far future
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they're totally delusional about so many things. Um, so the
yeah,
priorities of this administration here, helping them regain their self confidence, that's condescending. Decline of European, address the
yeah,
decline of European influence, and it promotes national identities and self confidence. Engage diplomatically to
uh-huh,
stabilize relations with Russia and manage the Ukraine conflict.
yeah,
Uh, and also down a little bit further, support Central, Eastern, and Southern European nations through commercial ties and cultural exchanges. Um, he's telling them that they've been wrong for a good long while and they need to stop being wrong. And
uh-huh,
he's not going to fight Russia, and they're not going to fight Russia. Um, and they just need to come down off their high horse. I mean, that's what I take all that as being
yeah, yeah,
that. And he's couching it in terms that he's saying they would be more self confident if they asserted their own ability to resist anything that Russia might do instead of crying wolf and saying that
uh-huh,
the Russians are coming, and doing all this jabbering
uh-huh,
about drafting large numbers of white Europeans to go be fed into a machine. Uh,
mm,
and I think that's probably a good way of characterizing it. That all of that latter stuff that they're doing right now is all signs of weakness that they just can't. They're
mhm,
they can't get over the Cold War, and they can't get over the idea that Russia could be anything other than a nefarious specter. Um, and he's going to help them get over that, though. And he's going to help the other, not the Western European nations, but the other nations um, through commercial ties. And I take that as another kind of hint that they're not gonna play this anti-Russian game. That's Fico in Slovakia. That's the Poles. That's what's his name in Hungary, Orban.
if I remember correctly, he wants to dismantle the EU, and he said that in this thing by taking specifically Poland, Hungary, Italy and Austria out of the equation. And I'm thinking, this
Yeah.
is music to my ears.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
Eisenhower,
perfect.
when he heard that Austria was gonna be neutral, he was happy, you know? He didn't
Mhm.
necessarily want them on our side, but that they were gonna be neutral, fine. Same thing with Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was neutral.
Yeah.
It just
And he wants to help the right wing, I guess you'd call them right wing parties in Europe to take over. I mean, that's the
yeah,
only way I can read this thing to
yep,
to actually right the ship, and I assume he's talking about AFD,
right,
um, National Front, um,
yep,
probably
right,
Farage's deal, and some of the other ones. He
right.
thinks that they represent the real will of the European people, which they do, and he intends to support that.
They do.
Yeah, and that
Mhm,
I think that line more than anything else is what got Merz to say, "This is unacceptable," the German chancellor. Um,
yeah,
but that's a
yeah,
shame. I mean, he doesn't have NATO's an occupational force. I mean, that's really what it is. That's
yeah.
that's why
It
we're
is.
stationed way over there.
I think we
And,
have 85 military bases in Germany. And,
yeah.
it was like 80 years ago, I thought we won the war.
Yeah. I mean,
Anyway, they just got it
unacceptable.
right.
They don't get to decide what's acceptable.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
Middle East. The Middle East. Do you have anything else about, Europe that you wanna
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
okay. Um, in the Middle East, it's interesting. Transitioning its focus
yeah.
in the Middle East from energy dominance to fostering partnership and investment. Reduced importance of the Middle East because of diversified energy and changing geopolitics. He's backing away from the Middle East and saying, it's not that important. There's a lot of oil there, but we have a lot of oil, and there are places around the world that have a lot of oil, and it's really not necessary.
Venezuela,
Yeah, Venezuela. Well, it's that their oil is,
Venezuela.
yeah, their oil is hard to refine. It's very, very crude. Um, I don't think
Yeah,
he's down
it
there for the oil. I
is,
think he's down there
but we have
to
the
fight.
capability to refine it.
Yeah, I think he's down there to fight the British because I think Venezuela is like the Qatar of the Western Hemisphere, and that a lot of their I'm partial to this theory that a lot of their economic the intelligence services raise money by selling drugs. That's one of the things they do, and they probably engage in human trafficking as well. And Venezuela
Oh, yeah.
is one of those places that stands out as far as running drugs. And I think he's trying to that it's a shot at MI6 and the Brits. It doesn't seem like it because it's Venezuela. It's down there, but I think it's a hub for them to make money. This
Yeah.
is what I've been told by people who know, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure that it's wrong.
I believe it.
Um,
I totally believe it.
he wants to combat radicalism. Doesn't want to engage in nation building, which is good to read because nation
Right.
building is. I remember the first time. Let's see, when was it? Yeah, it was after 9/11. I was all for going in, uh, except the one thing that I didn't want to happen was us to try to do a nation building project in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And that was probably a mistake to think that I mean, we should have just sent special forces in to do whatever we needed to do and not gone in to occupy the country. They had a list of 5 or 7 countries that they wanted to do bum, 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 bum.
7.
9/11, yeah, or
7,
7,
yeah.
let's say 9/11 was just an excuse really to do that. Um, he wants to
Right,
expand the Abraham
right.
Accords,
It was.
which is nice. Um, Let's see. And the last thing on here is Africa. And the interesting thing about the Africa section is he wants to wind down the dependency and wind up trade and investment partnerships to develop it. More or less the same thing that he was talking about with Latin America. That is to say, he doesn't want all this foreign aid going straight to, whoever happens to be in charge of the government and their family. He'd rather pour
President for
money
life.
into, yeah, a president for life.
Yeah.
He'd rather pour money
Yes.
into businesses and things that could actually bring people up out of the mud. Good luck. So, Africa. I'm not that
Yeah,
optimistic
good luck
about
with that.
sub-Saharan Africa. But you can't just totally write them off. So starting business and coaching them on how to actually run it and get it up and running, and getting a real, um,
Yeah,
hopefully industrial economy, going there, would be nice. Uh, Conflict
yeah,
resolution and prevention, in some of these places, and avoiding long-term military commitments, which is always a good thing.
yeah.
Um, do you have any other thoughts about any of this stuff that,
You
I
know
just kind of ran through it. Yeah.
I would like to see a day in which our military spending is down to 500 billion instead of 1 trillion. I would
Yeah.
really like to see that. Now, if Trump gets his way and he's not, you know, stopped one way or the other, and the deep state loses its hold over the administrative apparatus, which I think is happening, by the way. I mean, not
Mhm.
to my not to the extent I want it to, or as quickly as I want it to, but I do see things. Um, I don't. What I'm trying to say is, even if Newsom was elected president in 2028, I don't think America has the demographic stability, the civilizational oomph to uh, go back to being what it was back in the 50s. And on the other hand, if he tries to take us back to opening up the border and all that, then, then it's Katie bar the door.
Mhm.
I mean, then we will have some type of civil unrest. We may already be there. Okay.
Yeah.
We may be at 1856. Okay. What
Yeah.
1856 was to 1861. That's where
Yeah.
we may be right now. And well, I'm not going to say anything more. I'll get
Oh,
in trouble, so I'm not going to do it.
that's all
But
right.
the time will come to talk about it, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So, we're about an hour 15, 16 in. We can always do
Okay.
another one on this or any subject that's around. I feel
We good.
another on Ukraine coming on, when it falls, basically.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Agreed.
yeah.
Agreed.
So if you like what you heard here,
Okay.
please, hit like and subscribe, and we will see you next time on Hegemonix.